3 days after Luna's death, Sarah sat in her lawyer's office, a stack of documents spread across the mahogany desk between them. Jake Morrison had been David's roommate at law school, and the grief in his eyes matched her own as he reviewed the paperwork Karen had tricked her into signing. "Sarah, this is bad," Jake said, running his hand through his graying hair. "This land management agreement essentially gives Karen power of attorney over your property decisions. She can authorize access, negotiate contracts, even sell parcels, if she deems it financially necessary." Sarah's jaw tightened. "How is that legal?" "You signed it. And given your emotional state after David's death, plus the financial pressure from the medical bills and funeral costs, a court might view Karen as acting in your best interest." Jake leaned forward. "But there's something else. I did some digging on this Riverside Hunting Club." He slid a folder across the desk. "They are not just weekend hunters. Jim Brennan owns 3 sporting goods stores and has political connections throughout the county. More importantly, they've had safety violations before." Sarah opened the folder, her pulse quickening. "What kind of violations?" 2 years ago, they had an incident on private property in the next county. Shot a neighbor's horse. Claimed it was an accident, paid a settlement, and the whole thing was buried. Same pattern, they claimed they had permission from a land manager who turned out to be acting without proper authority. The pieces began clicking together in Sarah's mind. "Karen's done this before." "I think so. And I think Brennan knew exactly what he was dealing with. This wasn't some innocent mistake, it was a scam they've been running together." Sarah felt the cold fury in her chest expand. "Can we prove it?" "Not yet. But I've got a private investigator looking into their financial records. If there's a pattern of payments between Karen and the hunting club, we'll find it." As Sarah left Jake's office, her phone rang. Her brother Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Sarah, I've been making calls. That hunting club has connections you wouldn't believe. County commissioner, sheriff's department, even the judge who handled David's estate. They are protected." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying a normal legal approach might not work. These people have been gaming the system for years." Marcus paused. "But I've got another idea. You remember what I do for a living, right?" Sarah smiled grimly. Marcus was an investigative journalist who'd made his career exposing corruption. "What do you need?" "Access to your property. I want to document everything, the scene, the damage, Emma's condition. And I want to interview Karen and the hunting club members. On camera. They'll never agree to that. They will if they think it's about clearing their names. I'm going to approach them as a journalist doing a story on hunting safety. They'll want to control the narrative." 2 hours later, Sarah was hiding in her own barn, watching through a crack in the door as Marcus set up his camera equipment in the yard. Karen had arrived exactly on schedule, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a sympathetic expression that made Sarah's skin crawl. "I'm so sorry about what happened," Karen was saying to Marcus. "That poor little girl. But you have to understand. I was trying to help Sarah. She's been struggling so much since David died." "Tell me about the land management agreement," Marcus said, his voice professionally neutral. "Sarah asked me to help her with the property. She was overwhelmed, barely holding it together. I've been managing real estate for 20 years, I know how to handle these situations." Sarah's hands clenched as she watched Karen perform her concerned neighbor act. "And the hunting club? How did you decide to authorize their access?" Karen's expression grew animated. "The Riverside Hunting Club has an excellent reputation. Jim Brennan is a respected businessman in the community. They needed a place to hunt, and Sarah needed the income. It seemed like a perfect solution." "But you didn't inform Sarah beforehand." "I tried to reach her, but she's been so fragile. I didn't want to burden her with the details. I thought it would be a wonderful surprise when she got the check." Sarah had heard enough. She emerged from the barn, and Karen's face went pale. "Sarah, I didn't know you were here. This is my property, Karen. Where else would I be?" Marcus kept the camera rolling as the two women faced each other. Karen was just explaining how she authorized the hunting club access to help you financially. Help me. Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. You mean like you helped by having my daughter's therapy animal killed? That was a tragic accident. No one could have predicted you knew Luna was back there. You've seen Emma with her dozens of times. You knew that Llama roamed free in that pasture. Karen's composure began to crack. I can't be expected to keep track of every animal on your property. If I'd been more responsible. Sarah stepped closer and Karen instinctively backed away. You forged my signature on a land use permit. You took money from hunters without my knowledge. You're the one who's been irresponsible. I never forged anything. You signed that agreement under false pretenses. You told me it was for basic maintenance. Marcus zoomed in on Karen's face as she realized she'd been caught. So you admit the agreement wasn't clearly explained? That's not. Look, this is all a misunderstanding. Sarah's been under tremendous stress, don't. Sarah's voice cut through the air like a blade. Don't you dare use my grief as an excuse for your greed. Greed? I was trying to help you by keeping half the fee for yourself. Karen's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah smiled coldly. Jake Morrison is a thorough lawyer, Karen. He found the bank records. The hunting club paid you $1,000. You were planning to give me $500 and keep the rest as your management fee. That's standard practice. I have expenses. You have expenses that cost my daughter her voice. The weight of those words hung in the air. Karen looked around desperately as if seeking escape, but Marcus kept the camera trained on her face. This interview is over, Karen said finally. I don't have to listen to these accusations. No, you don't, Sarah agreed. But you will have to explain them to the police. And to the county prosecutor. And to the state licensing board that oversees real estate managers. Karen's eyes widened. You can't prove anything. I can prove you misrepresented the agreement. I can prove you took money under false pretenses. And I can prove you knew about the risks to my property and my animals. As Karen hurried away, nearly running to her car, Marcus lowered his camera. That went better than I expected. She's panicking. Good. Sarah watched Karen's car disappear down the driveway. What's next? Now we go after the hunting club. But Sarah, Marcus's expression grew serious. These people have money and connections. They are going to fight back hard. Let them try. An hour later, Sarah stood in the field where Luna had died, placing a small memorial stone that Emma had painted with trembling hands. The little girl hadn't spoken since the shooting, retreating completely into the silence that had defined her after the accident. As Sarah knelt beside the stone, she heard a car approaching. She looked up to see an expensive pickup truck pulling into her driveway, Jim Brennan's truck, according to the research Marcus had done. Brennan climbed out, along with two other men Sarah recognized from the hunting party. They approached her slowly, their hands visible, clearly trying to appear non-threatening. Mrs. Chen, Brennan called out. We need to talk. Sarah stood, her hand instinctively moving to her back pocket where she kept her phone. Marcus was still on the property, setting up for his next interview. I have nothing to say to you. Look. I know you're upset, but this whole situation has gotten out of hand. We're reasonable people. We can work this out. You killed my daughter's therapy animal. It was an accident. A tragic accident. But dragging this through the courts isn't going to bring your llama back. Brennan's tone was conciliatory, but Sarah could see the calculation in his eyes. We're prepared to offer significant compensation. Enough to buy a whole herd of llamas. And in exchange, you drop any legal action. Sign a non-disclosure agreement. We all move on with our lives. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. How much? Brennan's face brightened. $50,000. Cash. No lawyers, no paperwork except the NDA. 50,000. Sarah let the number hang in the air. For Luna's life. And for your discretion. This kind of publicity could destroy our club, ruin our reputations. We've got families, businesses, just like I have a daughter who won't speak because of what you did. Kids are resilient. She'll bounce back. But if this gets out, are you threatening me, Mr. Brennan? I'm offering you a solution. Take the money. Start over somewhere else. This property's too much for you to handle alone anyway. Sarah felt the familiar cold calculation settle over her. I need to think about it. Don't think too long. Offers like this don't stay on the table forever. As the truck disappeared down her driveway, Sarah pulled out her phone and called Marcus. They just offered me 50,000 to disappear, she said without preamble. 50,000. Marcus whistled low. That's serious money. They are scared. Good. Because I'm about to give them something to really be scared of. What do you mean? Sarah looked back at Luna's memorial stone, then at the house where Emma sat by the window. 1 week later, Sarah sat across from Jim Brennan in the sterile conference room of his lawyer's office, a cashier's check for $50,000 between them. The non-disclosure agreement lay beside it, crisp and official, promising her silence in exchange for their money. I'm glad you came to your senses, Brennan said, his relief evident. This is better for everyone involved. Sarah picked up the pen, her hand steady despite the rage burning in her chest. Before I sign, I want to understand exactly what this covers. Brennan's lawyer, a thin man with nervous eyes, leaned forward. The agreement prevents you from discussing the incident with media, law enforcement, or any third parties. In exchange, our clients admit no wrongdoing but agree to this settlement. What about my daughter? She's been traumatized by this. The agreement includes provisions for therapy costs, Brennan said magnanimously. We are not monsters, Mrs. Chen. We understand what you're going through. Sarah looked at the check again. $50,000. More money than she'd seen since David's death. Enough to solve her immediate financial problems, maybe even relocate if she wanted to start over. She signed the document with a flourish. Excellent, Brennan said, sliding the check across the table. I think we can all put this unfortunate incident behind us now. As Sarah left the office, she felt her phone buzz. A text from Marcus, package delivered. You sure about this? She typed back, absolutely. Phase 2 starts now. 3 days. Later, Sarah was in her kitchen when she heard the first explosion. She looked out the window to see smoke rising from the direction of Brennan's main sporting goods store. Her phone rang immediately. Sarah, are you watching the news? Marcus's voice was tight with excitement. She switched on the television to see a reporter standing in front of Brennan's store, smoke billowing behind her. Preliminary reports suggest the explosion originated in the ammunition storage area. No injuries have been reported, but the damage appears extensive. That's unfortunate, Sarah said calmly. Sarah, tell me you didn't. I didn't do anything. I've been home all morning and I have the security footage to prove it. The reporter continued, this is the second incident this week involving businesses connected to the Riverside Hunting Club. On Monday, the club's lodge suffered significant water damage after what appeared to be a plumbing failure that flooded the entire building. Sarah smiled. Imagine that. Fire investigators are on scene, but early reports suggest the explosion may have been caused by improperly stored ammunition reacting to an electrical surge. The store's security system apparently malfunctioned earlier this morning, leaving no footage of the incident. How convenient, Sarah murmured. Marcus's voice grew urgent. Sarah, whatever you're doing, you need to stop. If they can connect you to this, connect me to what? A series of unfortunate accidents. I signed their NDA, Marcus. I'm legally prohibited from taking any action against them. That's not what this is, and you know it. Sarah's expression hardened. What this is karma. These people destroyed my family. They thought they could buy their way out of consequences. They were wrong. Over the next week, the accidents escalated. The hunting club's president found his expensive truck at the bottom of a lake after the brake line mysteriously failed. Another member's boat sank at the marina when the hull developed several precise holes. Karen Steele's real estate office was condemned after a gas leak that investigators couldn't explain. But the coup de grace came when Marcus's investigative report aired on the evening news. Tonight, an exclusive investigation into corruption and cover-ups in rural land management, the anchor announced. Channel 7's Marcus Chen exposes a network of illegal hunting schemes that have been operating for years. Sarah watched from her living room as Marcus laid out the entire conspiracy. Financial records showing repeated payments between Karen and the hunting club. Testimony from other property owners who'd been swindled. Evidence of the club's previous incidents that had been covered up. The centerpiece was the footage he'd shot at Sarah's property, Karen's nervous breakdown, her admission of the financial arrangements, and most damning of all, the casual way she dismissed the death of a therapy animal. This llama wasn't just a pet, Marcus said in his voiceover as the camera showed Luna's memorial stone. She was a certified therapy animal helping a traumatized child recover from witnessing her father's death. The hunting club knew this, according to sources, but proceeded anyway. The story went viral within hours. #JusticeForLuna began trending on social media. Animal rights groups picked up the story. The state attorney general's office announced they were opening an investigation. Sarah's phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, lawyers offering to represent her, activist groups seeking her support. She declined them all, citing the NDA she'd signed. "I'm legally prevented from discussing this situation," she told each caller. "But I appreciate your concern." It was the perfect cover. She was bound by the agreement, so she couldn't be blamed for the media attention. After all, she hadn't spoken to any reporters. The next morning, Jim Brennan was at her door, his face red with fury. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he snarled. "Having your brother do your dirty work while you hide behind that NDA." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah said pleasantly. "I haven't violated our agreement in any way. Don't play games with me. I know you're behind all of this." "Behind what?" "A journalist doing his job. My brother investigating a story. That's called freedom of the press, Mr. Brennan. The accidents. The sabotage. I know it's you." Sarah tilted her head. "Are you accusing me of something? Because if you are, I'd like to call my lawyer." Brennan's hands clenched at his sides. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "We have connections, resources," had Sarah corrected. Past tense. "Because right now, every one of your connections is running for cover. The county commissioner already announced his suspending all hunting permits pending the investigation. The sheriff's department is reviewing every incident your club has been involved in. This isn't over." "No," Sarah agreed. "It's not. See, the beautiful thing about public outrage is that it takes on a life of its own. I don't need to do anything else. The story's out there now, and it's spreading. Every day, more people learn about what you did to my daughter. We paid you. We had a deal. And I've honored that deal. I haven't spoken to a single reporter. I haven't filed any lawsuits. I haven't even publicly accused you of anything." Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "But I never agreed to control what other people might do with information they obtained independently." As Brennan stormed away, Sarah felt a presence behind her. She turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, her small face pale but determined. "Mama," Emma said quietly. It was the first word she'd spoken since Luna's death. Sarah knelt down, her heart racing. "What is it, sweetheart?" Emma looked toward the field where Luna's memorial stone stood, then back at her mother. "Are you making the bad men pay?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm trying to, baby." "Good." Emma's voice was stronger now. "Luna would want them to pay." As if summoned by her words, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: federal agents raid Riverside Hunting Club offices in corruption investigation. Sarah looked at the notification, then at her daughter's fierce little face. Yes, she said softly. I think Luna would want them to pay. That evening, Sarah sat on her porch watching the sunset, Emma curled up beside her. The little girl was still fragile, still healing, but she was talking again. Short sentences, whispered. Words, but progress. Marcus called as the last light faded from the sky. Sarah, they arrested Karen today. Financial fraud, conspiracy, a dozen other charges. Brennan's next, the FBI found evidence of tax evasion, illegal land deals, you name it. And the hunting club? Finished. Their licenses have been revoked, their assets frozen. Half the members are lawyering up, the other half are turning state's evidence. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction settle over her. What about the others? The ones who were there that morning, cooperating fully. Apparently, they had no idea about the larger conspiracy. They thought they were just going on a legitimate hunt. So they were victims too, in a way. Sarah. Marcus's voice grew serious. You know this isn't over, right? Even with Brennan and Karen facing charges, even with the club destroyed, some things can't be undone. Sarah looked at Emma, who was drawing pictures of Luna in her sketchbook. I know. But sometimes justice isn't about fixing what was broken. Sometimes it's about making sure the people who broke it can't hurt anyone else. And if they figure out what you did. The accidents, the sabotage. Sarah smiled in the darkness. What accidents? What sabotage? I'm just a grieving widow who signed an NDA and kept her mouth shut while justice took its course. You're scary when you're calculating, you know that. I'm a mother, Marcus. We are all scary when our children are threatened. As she ended the call, Sarah felt a small hand slip into hers. Emma was looking up at her with David's dark eyes. Wise beyond her years. Will Luna come back now? She asked softly. Sarah's heart clenched. No, sweetheart. Luna can't come back. But she's watching over us. And she knows that the people who hurt her can't hurt anyone else ever again. Emma nodded solemnly. That's good. Luna was a good. The threatening text arrived at 11:47 p.m., jolting Sarah from the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months. She stared at the unknown number, her blood running cold as she read the message again. We know what you did. And we are coming for you. She immediately called Marcus, who answered on the first ring despite the late hour. Sarah. What's wrong? Someone knows. They are threatening me. Threatening you how? Sarah read him the text. The line went quiet for a long moment. Marcus. I'm here. I'm thinking. Could be Brennan trying to intimidate you from jail. Could be one of his associates. Or. He paused. Or what? Or someone higher up the food chain. Sarah, when we started digging into this, we uncovered a lot of connections. Political connections. What if the hunting club was just the tip of the iceberg? Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we rattled some cages we didn't know existed. The next morning, Sarah was making breakfast when she noticed the black sedan parked across from her driveway. It had been there when she woke up, and the windows were too tinted to see inside. She tried to maintain her routine, walking Emma to the school bus stop, but the sedan followed at a distance. When she returned home, it was gone. That afternoon, Jake Morrison called with disturbing news. Sarah, I've been contacted by some very expensive lawyers. They are representing interests that weren't directly involved in the hunting club situation. But they claim they've been damaged by the media coverage. What kind of interests? Political donors, business partners, people who had financial ties to Brennan's operations. They are claiming that Marcus's investigation has damaged their reputations by association. Sarah felt the familiar cold calculation settle over her. Let me guess. They want me to make Marcus retract his story. They want a lot more than that. They want you to publicly state that you fabricated evidence, that the whole thing was a revenge plot that got out of hand. And if you refuse, They'll file a massive defamation lawsuit. Not just against you, but against Marcus, the television station, anyone who touched this story. They have the resources to drag this out for years. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Jake, how did they know to contact you? My arrangement with you isn't public record. Oh. I don't know. That's a good question. Someone's been watching me closely. That evening, Sarah was checking the locks on her doors when she heard Emma scream from upstairs. She took the stairs 3 at a time, her heart hammering. She found Emma standing at her bedroom window, pointing at the backyard. There's someone out there, Mama. By Lunar Stone. Sarah looked out the window and saw a figure in dark clothing standing beside the memorial. As she watched, the figure raised something to their face, binoculars or a camera, and pointed it directly at the house. Get away from the window, Sarah whispered, pulling Emma back. She grabbed her phone and called 911, but by the time the police arrived 20 minutes later, the figure was gone. The officers found footprints around the memorial and evidence that someone had been there for an extended period. Have you been receiving any threats? The younger officer asked. Sarah showed him the text. He frowned as he read it. This could be related to that big hunting club investigation, couldn't it? You were involved in that. I was the victim of their negligence, yes. Maybe you should consider staying somewhere else for a while. With family or friends. Sarah's jaw tightened. This is my home. I'm not being driven out of it. But as the police left, she realized she was in deeper trouble than she'd anticipated. Someone with serious resources was escalating the situation. And they weren't playing by the same rules she'd used against the hunting club. The next morning brought a new horror. Sarah woke to find her mailbox destroyed, her driveway spray-painted with obscenities, and her security cameras smashed. But worst of all, someone had desecrated Luna's memorial stone, covering it with red paint that looked disturbingly like blood. Emma saw it first, running outside before Sarah could stop her. The little girl's scream pierced the morning air as she fell to her knees beside the vandalized memorial. They heard Luna again. Emma sobbed. They heard her again. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, rage building in her chest like a wildfire. No, sweetheart. They can't hurt Luna anymore. This is just mean people trying to hurt us. Why won't they leave us alone? It was a question Sarah couldn't answer. She'd thought her war was over, that justice had been served. But apparently, she'd underestimated the reach of the corruption she'd exposed. Her phone rang. Marcus, his voice tight with urgency. Sarah, don't go anywhere alone today. I've been getting calls from sources at the FBI. Apparently, the investigation into the hunting club has uncovered something much bigger. What kind of something? A network of illegal land deals, tax evasion, maybe even money laundering. Brennan wasn't just running a hunting club, he was laundering money for some very dangerous people. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What kind of dangerous people? The kind that don't hesitate to eliminate problems. Sarah, I think you need to disappear for a while. I can't run. Emma's just starting to heal. She needs stability, routine, she needs her mother alive. That afternoon, Sarah made a decision that went against every instinct she had. She called the number that had sent the threatening text. We need to talk, she said when a gravelly voice answered. Smart woman. Tonight. Midnight. The old quarry on Route 47. Come alone. I'll be there. Mrs. Chen. Your daughter's a beautiful little girl. It would be a shame if anything happened to her. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her hands shaking with rage. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. She called Marcus. I need you to take Emma tonight. Tell her it's a sleepover with her uncle. Sarah, what are you planning? I'm planning to end this. Don't do anything stupid. These aren't small-town hunters you're dealing with anymore. No, they are not. They are something much worse. They threatened my daughter, Marcus. They threatened Emma. Sarah, they made it personal. Now they are going to learn what happens when you threaten a mother's child. That night, Sarah stood in her bedroom, staring at the locked box in her closet. She hadn't opened it since David's death, hadn't wanted to remember this part of her past. But some skills, once learned, were never forgotten. She'd met David when she was serving as a military police officer in Iraq. She'd been trained in surveillance, tactics, and when necessary, elimination of threats. After her discharge, she'd tried to bury that part of herself, to become the suburban wife and mother she'd thought she wanted to be. But tonight, she was going to remember who she used to be. Sarah opened the box and pulled out items she hadn't touched in years: night vision goggles, a tactical knife, a small pistol she'd kept legal and well-maintained. She dressed in dark clothing and checked her equipment with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this before. At 11:30 p.m., she drove to the quarry, but she didn't go to the meeting spot. Instead, she parked a mile away and approached. On foot, using skills she'd learned in the desert to move silently through the darkness. She positioned herself on a ridge overlooking the quarry, her night vision goggles revealing the scene below. 3 vehicles were parked around the old pit. 6 men, all armed, waiting for her to walk into their trap. But Sarah hadn't survived 2 tours in Iraq by walking into traps. She spent an hour studying their positions, their patterns, their weaknesses. These weren't soldiers, they were criminals, and they'd gotten sloppy from years of intimidating civilians. At 12:15 a.m., she made her move. The first man went down silently, a precise application of pressure to his carotid artery that left him unconscious but alive. The second never saw her coming, too focused on his phone to notice the shadow moving behind him. By the time the others realized something was wrong, Sarah had evened the odds considerably. She emerged from the darkness with her weapon drawn, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd faced down insurgents in Fallujah. "Drop your weapons. Now." The remaining men spun around, their guns coming up, but Sarah was already moving. Years of suburban life hadn't dulled her reflexes as much as she'd feared. The firefight was brief and decisive. When the smoke cleared, 3 men lay unconscious, 1 was nursing a wounded shoulder, and the other 2 were face down in the dirt with their hands zip-tied behind their backs. Sarah stood over them, her weapon trained on the group. "Now, who wants to explain why you threatened my daughter?" The man with the wounded shoulder looked up at her with grudging respect. "You're not what we expected." "I'm exactly what you should have expected. I'm a mother whose child was threatened. There's nothing more dangerous in this world. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The people we work for are about to learn that they picked the wrong family to mess with." Sarah's voice was ice cold. "See, you made a tactical error. You assumed I was just a grieving widow who got lucky against some small-town hunters. You didn't do your homework." She pulled out her phone and showed them the recording app that had been running since she'd arrived. "This entire conversation has been streamed live to a secure server. If anything happens to me or my family, it gets released to the FBI, the media, and every news outlet in the country." The wounded man's face paled. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Tell me, WH." 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same pasture where Luna had died, but the scene was transformed. Where once there had been only grief and a simple memorial stone, now there was life. "Mama, look." Emma's voice rang out across the field, bright with joy. "Buttercup's following me." Sarah watched as her daughter led a gentle golden brown alpaca in circles around Luna's memorial, which had been restored and expanded into a beautiful garden. The stone now bore Luna's name, surrounded by wildflowers that Emma had planted herself, their colors brilliant in the afternoon sun. "She likes the treats you brought her," Sarah called back, smiling at the sight of her daughter's radiant happiness. Emma had chosen Buttercup herself from the alpaca rescue center 2 hours away. The selection process had taken weeks. Emma had insisted on visiting every animal until she found one that felt right. When she'd met Buttercup, a rescue who'd been abandoned and traumatized, the connection had been immediate. "She's scared. Like I was," Emma had whispered to Sarah that first day. "But she's brave too." The therapy had been working. Not just for Emma, but for both of them. Dr. Martinez had helped them process not just the trauma of Luna's death, but also David's accident and the violence that had followed. Emma was speaking normally now, laughing again, even telling jokes that made Sarah's heart soar. "Mrs. Chen." A voice called from behind her. Sarah turned to see Detective Rivera approaching, the FBI agent who'd handled the final arrests in the money laundering case. She'd become something of a family friend over the months, checking in periodically as the legal proceedings wound down. "Detective, how did the sentencing go?" "Brennan got 15 years. Karen got 8. The money laundering network is completely dismantled." Rivera's expression grew more serious. "There's something else, though. We found something during the final property searches that you should know about." Sarah felt a familiar tension creep into her shoulders. "What kind of something?" Rivera pulled out a manila folder. Financial records showing that Karen had been systematically defrauding other property owners for over 5 years. "You weren't her first victim, you were just the one who fought back." Sarah opened the folder, scanning the documents. Names, addresses, amounts stolen. Dozens of people, many of them elderly or recently widowed, who'd been manipulated the same way she had. "How much?" "Total. Nearly $500,000. She was funding her lifestyle by preying on people in vulnerable situations." Sarah felt a cold satisfaction settle over her. "Good thing she's in prison then." "There's more. The victims are organizing a class action lawsuit to recover their losses. They want you to be the lead plaintiff." "Me? Why?" Rivera smiled. "Because you're the one who brought her down. You're the one who proved she could be beaten. They see you as their champion." Sarah looked out at Emma, who was now sitting in the grass beside Buttercup, reading aloud from a picture book about farm animals. The alpaca was listening intently, her large eyes focused on the little girl's face. "What would it involve?" "Testimony. About what happened to you. Helping other victims tell their stories. Making sure Karen pays back every penny she stole. And the media attention would be significant. But Sarah, these people need someone to speak for them. Someone who understands what they went through." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching her daughter's animated storytelling. Emma had found her voice again, not just literally, but emotionally. She was confident now, resilient, unafraid to speak up when something was wrong. "I'll do it," Sarah said finally. "But on one condition." "What's that?" "The settlement money goes to a fund for therapy animals. Animals like Luna who help kids heal from trauma." Rivera grinned. "I think the other victims would love that idea." After the detective left, Sarah walked over to where Emma sat with Buttercup. The alpaca looked up at her with intelligent brown eyes, so different from Luna's gentle gaze but equally compassionate. "What were you reading to her?" Sarah asked, settling down beside them. "The story about the brave little llama who saves the farm," Emma said. "Buttercup likes it. I think it reminds her of Luna." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Do you think Luna would be proud of us? Of how we helped catch the bad people?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think Luna would be proud that we didn't let them win. And I think she'd really like Buttercup." "Why's that?" "Because Buttercup was scared and alone, like I was. But now she has us and she's getting braver every day." Emma looked up at her mother with David's dark eyes, wise beyond her years. "Luna would want us to help other scared animals, don't you think?" Sarah smiled, pulling her daughter close. "I think you're absolutely right." That evening, Sarah stood on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Emma was inside doing homework, Buttercup grazing peacefully in the pasture, everything exactly as it should be. Her phone rang. Marcus, calling from the airport. "How was the journalism conference?" she asked. "Productive. I've got 3 networks interested in the documentary about the case. Justice for Luna, how one mother took down a criminal empire." Sarah laughed. "That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" "Sarah, you literally dismantled a multi-state money laundering operation because they killed your daughter's therapy animal." If that's not documentary worthy, I don't know what is. It was never about taking down a criminal empire. It was about protecting Emma. Oh no. That's what makes it such a powerful story. You didn't set out to be a hero, you just refused to be a victim. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Broken, desperate. Overwhelmed by grief and responsibility. It seemed like a different person entirely. Marcus. Yeah. Do you think I'm a different person now? After everything that happened? Different how? Harder, maybe. More dangerous. Marcus was quiet. For a long moment. I think you're the person you were always meant to be. The woman who was strong enough to serve her country, smart enough to build a life with David, and fierce enough to protect her daughter when everything fell apart. The suburban mom thing was just a costume you wore for a while. And now? Now. You're Sarah Chen. War veteran, devoted mother, and apparently the most terrifying enemy a criminal could ever make. Sarah smiled in the darkness. I like the sound of that. After ending the call, she walked back inside to check on Emma. Her daughter was at the kitchen table, carefully working on a school project about heroes. Who are you writing about? Sarah asked, looking over Emma's shoulder. You, Emma said. Matter-of-factly. Mrs. Patterson said we should write about our personal hero. Someone who shows courage and protects others. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she read Emma's careful handwriting. My mom is my hero because when bad people hurt our family, she made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. She's brave and smart and she always keeps me safe. She taught me that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's scary. Emma, you don't have to, I want to. Emma looked up at her with serious eyes. I want everyone to know that my mom is the strongest person in the world. And that Luna was brave too, and she helped me not be scared anymore. Sarah knelt beside her daughter's chair, overwhelmed by the fierce love that filled her chest. You know what makes me most proud of you? What? That after everything that happened, you chose to be kind. You chose to help Buttercup even though you were still healing yourself. That's real courage, Emma. That's what makes you my hero. Emma beamed, wrapping her arms around Sarah's neck. We are both heroes then. Yeah, we are. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah walked out to Luna's memorial garden. The flowers were thriving, their sweet scent carried on the evening breeze. She knelt beside the stone, running her fingers over Luna's name. I hope you're proud of us, she whispered. Emma's okay now. She's more than okay, she's thriving. And the people who hurt you can never hurt anyone else. A soft sound made her look up. Buttercup had wandered over from the pasture, her large eyes gentle in the moonlight. The alpaca settled down beside the memorial, as if standing guard over Luna's memory. Sarah smiled, reaching out to stroke Buttercup's soft neck. You understand, don't you? You know how important this place is. Buttercup made a soft humming sound, the alpaca equivalent of a purr. Take care of her for me, Sarah said softly. Take care of Emma like Luna did. Help her stay brave. As if in answer, Buttercup rested her head against Sarah's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and promise. Sarah sat there for a long time, surrounded by the peace she'd fought so hard to achieve. The nightmares were gone now. The fear was gone. The helplessness that had consumed her after David's death had been replaced by a quiet strength that she knew would carry her through whatever challenges lay ahead. She'd learned something important. Over these past months, sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies, it's refusing to let them steal your capacity for joy, for love, for hope. Luna was gone, but her legacy lived on in Emma's healing, in Buttercup's rescue, in the therapy animal fund that would help other traumatized children find their voices again. The bad men were in prison, their victims were finding justice, and Sarah had reclaimed not just her property but her power. Most importantly, Emma was laughing again. Speaking again. Dreaming again. That was worth everything Sarah had endured. As she stood to head back inside, Sarah took one last look at the memorial. The gunshot echoed across the pasture like thunder, and Sarah's world collapsed in 20 seconds. Her daughter's therapy llama, gentle Luna, who'd helped Emma speak again after the accident, lay motionless in the morning mist. The hunting club Karen had secretly allowed onto their property stood frozen, rifle still smoking, as Sarah's rage ignited something darker than they'd ever imagined. They thought they were hunting deer. They had no idea they'd just awakened. A mother's vengeance that would destroy the morning sun cast long shadows across the Whitmore property as Sarah Chen stepped onto her back porch, coffee mug in hand. The 150-acre spread had been in her late husband's family for 3 generations, and she'd fought tooth and nail to keep it after the accident that claimed David's life and left their 8-year-old daughter Emma mute with trauma. Luna, she called, scanning the rolling pasture for the cream-colored llama who'd become Emma's lifeline. The animal was nowhere to be seen, unusual for their morning routine. Sarah's phone buzzed. Karen Steele's name flashed on the screen, and her stomach tightened. Her neighbor had been circling like a vulture ever since David's funeral, dropping hints about Sarah's struggle to maintain such a large property alone. Sarah, honey, I hope you don't mind, but I gave the Riverside Hunting Club permission to use the back 40 acres of your land this morning. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. You what? Oh, don't get all worked up. They are experienced hunters, and Lord knows you need the money. I negotiated a nice fee for you of $500 for the morning hunt. You can thank me later. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Karen, you have no right. Technically, I do. Remember when you asked me to help with the property taxes last month? You signed that land management agreement. I'm just looking out for your best interests. The blood drained from Sarah's face. In a grief-stricken state, she trusted Karen with paperwork she'd been too overwhelmed to read carefully. That was supposed to be for basic maintenance, not, the hunters have been out there since dawn. Beautiful morning for it too. I'm sure they'll be respectful of your property. Sarah was already running toward the barn, her bare feet slipping on the dew-soaked grass. Karen, they can't be back there. Luna's in that pasture. She's not tied up, she roams free. And Emma, I'm sure your little pet is fine. These men know what they are doing. The line went dead. Sarah's hands shook as she grabbed her husband's binoculars from the barn. Through the lenses, she could see figures in orange vests moving through the tree line that bordered the back pasture. Her heart hammered as she searched for Luna's distinctive silhouette. Mom? Emma's voice was barely a whisper behind her. The little girl had been making progress, actually speaking again after months of silence, but her voice still carried the fragility of someone who'd watched her father die in a car accident that should have killed them both. Everything's okay, sweetheart. Go back inside. Where's Luna? Sarah's throat constricted. Luna wasn't just a pet. The llama was Emma's therapy animal, the only living creature who could coax words from her daughter's traumatized mind. The calm, intuitive animal had somehow reached Emma when psychiatrists and speech therapists had failed. She's probably just in the far pasture. Why don't you? The gunshot cracked across the morning air like a whip. Emma's scream pierced the silence that followed. Sarah spun around to see her daughter's face go white, her small body beginning to shake with the familiar tremors that had plagued her since the accident. No, 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 Sarah whispered, raising the binoculars again. Through the lenses, she could see the hunters gathered around something large and pale in the tall grass. Her world tilted. She was running before she realized it, her feet pounding across the pasture as Emma's sobs echoed behind her. The distance seemed endless, each step bringing her closer to a reality she couldn't accept. Luna lay on her side, her gentle eyes already glazing over. A hunter in his 50s with a graying beard stood over the body, his rifle still in his hands. 3 other men clustered around him, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Jesus Christ, one of them muttered. I thought it was a deer. What the hell is a llama doing out here? Another demanded. Sarah dropped to her knees beside Luna, her hands hovering over the animal's still form. The llama's cream-colored coat was stained with blood, and Sarah could see the wound in her chest where the bullet had found its mark. You killed her, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. You killed her. The bearded hunter, clearly the leader, stepped forward. Look, lady, we are sorry about your animal, but what was it doing loose in hunting territory? We had permission to be here. Sarah looked up at him and something cold and hard crystallized in her chest. Permission from whom? Karen Steele. She's the land manager, right? Said this was prime deer country. This is my land. My property. My daughter's therapy animal. The hunter's face paled. Your therapy animal? She was helping my daughter learn to speak again after watching her father die. Sarah's voice was deadly quiet now. Luna was the only thing that could reach her. The men exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, younger with nervous eyes, started backing away. We should call the police. This is all kinds of wrong. We had permission, the leader insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. We followed all proper protocols. Sarah stood slowly, her hands clenched at her sides. In the distance, she could see Emma running toward them, her small form stumbling through the tall grass. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, her mouth moving soundlessly as she tried to call for Luna. Emma, don't, Sarah started, but it was too late. Emma reached them and saw Luna's body. The scream that tore from her throat was inhuman, a sound of pure anguish that made the hunters step back in shock. She threw herself down beside the llama, her small hands pressing against the wound as if she could somehow bring her back to life. Luna, please wake up, Emma sobbed. Please, Luna. I need you. The sight of her daughter's breakdown ignited something primal in Sarah. She turned to face the hunters and they instinctively stepped back from the fury in her eyes. Get off my land, she said quietly. Look, we're really sorry about this. The leader tried again. Maybe we can work something out. Compensation or now. We'll pay for the animal. Whatever it's worth, Sarah's voice cut through the air like a blade. She was priceless. And you're trespassing. Get off my land. The hunters began to retreat, gathering their equipment with nervous haste. But Sarah wasn't done. What are your names? She called after them. They paused, looking back uncertainly. I asked for your names. The leader squared his shoulders. Look, lady, we're not trying to cause trouble. We had what we thought was legitimate permission, names. Jim Brennan, he said finally. This is my club. We are legitimate hunters with proper licenses. Sarah committed the name to memory, along with the faces of the other three men. Mr. Brennan, you and your club just made the biggest mistake of your lives. Something in her tone made them hurry their retreat. As they disappeared into the tree line, Sarah knelt beside Emma, who was still trying to wake Luna, her small voice breaking on the llama's name. Emma, honey, we need to go call the police. She's not moving, Mom. Why isn't she moving? Sarah gathered her daughter into her arms, feeling the little girl's body shake with sobs. Over Emma's head, she stared at Luna's still form, and a cold calculation began to form in her mind. Karen Steele thought she was clever, using Sarah's grief and desperation to manipulate her into signing away her rights. The hunting club thought they could simply apologize and walk away from destroying her daughter's lifeline to recovery. They were all about to learn that a mother's love could be the most dangerous force in the world. As Sarah carried Emma back toward the house, she was already making plans. She'd call the police first, establish the official record. Then she'd call her lawyer, David's old college roommate who'd been begging her to let him help with the estate issues. But most importantly, she'd call her brother Marcus, the investigative journalist who'd taught her that the most effective revenge was often the most patient one. The kind that destroyed people slowly, systematically, taking away everything they valued most. Karen Steele and the Riverside Hunting Club had no idea what they'd just unleashed. But they were going to learn. As they reached the house, Sarah looked back once at Luna's body in the distant pasture. The morning sun had fully risen now, casting the scene in harsh, unforgiving light. I'm going to make them pay, she whispered to herself. Every single one of them. In her arms, Emma had gone silent again, retreating into the trauma-induced muteness that Luna had so patiently coaxed her out of. The little girl's regression was complete, her fragile progress erased in a single gunshot. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Karen hoped the hunters didn't cause too much disruption. The check should arrive next week. Smiling face, Sarah stared at the message, her fury crystallizing into something far more dangerous than rage. This wasn't just about money or property rights anymore. This was about the systematic destruction of her family by people who thought they could manipulate her. Grief and desperation. She was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. The war had begun,